Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day 341. It is February the 13th, 2018, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, my cold is getting progressively better every day, so I feel better. I actually feel really good. I don't sound great, but I feel pretty good, so I guess that's what's important, right? So, anyway, let's get on with the news of the day. There's a lot of it. See how much time I got? Oh yeah, we're doing good. Alrighty. Well, Grassley and Graham, Senators Grassley and Graham, have called into question a letter that Susan Rice wrote to herself about a meeting in the White House on January the 5th, 2017. In the letter, Rice suggests that Obama and Comey were talking about how to share information with the incoming president and his team. Now, Grassley and Graham have written a letter to Susan Rice wanting to know if she was aware of the Page FISA warrant and if she knew about the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier. So let me give you a little bit more background on what they're talking about. Most of you have probably already heard about this, but for those of you who haven't, Susan Rice writes a letter, essentially an email, to herself. The email is written to herself. She emails it to herself, not to send to someone else, to email to herself. The letter that she writes to herself, or email, she writes on Inauguration Day, just hours before Trump is to take up residence at the White House. But what she's writing about was a meeting that occurred in the White House on January the 5th with Obama, Biden, Comey, we believe Brennan, possibly Clapper, and Rice, and Sally Yates. And in this letter, essentially, Susan Rice is saying, yeah, well, in the meeting, President Obama told the FBI director that he wasn't going to advise him on how to run the investigation and that they should do everything by the book. And she used the term by the book 3 or 4 times. So she gives this accounting of a meeting that occurred on the 5th, but she's writing about it on the 20th, on Inauguration Day. And then she emails it to herself. And clearly they're talking about the Russia investigation. Well, this is strange on a bunch of different levels. It's strange on one level because, first of all, what book are they talking about? By the book. What, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals? Is that the book that they're referring to? Certainly not the Constitution. Not the book of law. That certainly couldn't be it. Because as they're having this conversation, we know, I mean, what, James Comey is sitting there having Obama say, yes, Jim, and you're going to do this by the book. I'm not going to tell you how to pursue this. Do it by the book. And the whole time, Comey's got to know, well, let's see, where we got FISA warrants based on fraudulent information to the FISA court from a dossier allegedly written by an ex-British spy whose sources were allegedly Russians, which was paid for by the Clinton campaign, and all this laundered through an opposition research firm called Fusion GPS. Oh, which, by the way, the number 4 man at counterintelligence at the DOJ NSD, whose wife was working for them on this Trump-Russia collusion story. Do you think any of that was running through Comey's mind? This is why this is so nutty. And do you think that Obama didn't know? Do you think that Susan Rice didn't know? Come on. It's clear what this letter was. Let me tell you what I think happened. I think that something happened in the day or days, maybe even hours leading up to the transition with Trump being inaugurated, coming to the White House. Something happened in those last few days, maybe in the last few hours, where they learned something that was going to expose their criminality. And so they decided that they needed to start the cover-up. They realized at this point, okay, we're out of here. Trump's coming in. He's going to discover this and this and this. We need to cover up these tracks as best as we can. And I think that this letter is nothing more than an attempt on the part of Susan Rice to, it's hard to believe, but to have this letter so that they could someday refer to this letter and say, see, we got this letter where we had a conversation in the White House where the president said he wanted the law enforcement and intelligence community to go by the book on this investigation, and that he wasn't going to get involved. We're going to do it by the book, just so that they could have it in record, so they could say, see, we're clean. It's almost... It's bizarro world. But as I've pointed out over the past few months, as more and more, as we learn a lot more, as we go down this road here and unpeel this onion and get more and more evidence, it's becoming more and more obvious that these people were not very smart. Yes, they were not expecting this stuff to be scrutinized. They weren't expecting to lose. But even then, just the whole way they went about this entire program was very Bush League. It's definitely not, Christopher Steele. I mean, he's not acting like a pro. He's not behaving like a pro. The people in the intelligence community, Peter's been stroking us, and Lisa Page, look at their behavior. Bruce Orr's got his wife working at Fusion GPS. I mean, they're doing these FISA warrants, violating the law, knowing good and well that eventually someone was probably going to stumble onto it, and they did. Mike Rogers stumbled onto it. They were just so careless and reckless and amateurish in what they did. Even if they thought it would never come to light, when you're going through the process, you would think that they would still be, a lot smarter than they were about what they did. But the only thing that this letter has done is raise more questions. And now Susan Rice is going to have to explain herself. And what she did is she actually laid a trap for herself, because as you can see, the two things that Grassley and Rice now want her to explain is they want her to explain in this letter if she was aware of the Carter Page FISA warrant, and if she knew about the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier. Because if she knew about either of these things, then the entire conversation that she emailed herself about was a complete farce. To be saying, yes, well, the president said it's got to be done by the book. Well, if she knows that what was going on with the Carter Page FISA warrant, and she knows about the FBI's handling of the dossier, she knows that they were far from following it by the book. And she knew that when she wrote this letter. She would have known it. So what's she going to have to do now? She's either going to have to say, yes, I knew about the Page FISA warrant, and I knew about the FBI's handling of the dossier, which completely makes everything she wrote about a lie, or she says that she didn't know about either of these things, in which case she's lying. Because we know that she did a lot of unmasking, didn't she? She's really got her tit in a ringer here. And I don't know how she's going to talk herself out of this one, and I don't think she will. Not at all. From this point forward, she will be pleading the fifth. That's just not a question she can answer. I doubt that they'll get a response. If they do, it will be a very legally worded response that doesn't really answer the questions at all. But she's got herself in a real pickle here, because the letter is just bizarro world. Why she would write a letter 2 weeks after the fact about a meeting that took place 2 weeks previous, which was in fact in a classified setting, talking about a classified investigation. And the point of the entire memo seems to be that she wrote to herself, of the entire letter that she wrote to herself, was that Obama wanted it done by the book. Why would he have to tell the FBI director that he wants it done by the book? I mean, how would you feel if you're the FBI director and the president looks at you and says, yeah, and I want you to do it by the book? My thought would be, well, yeah, what are you suggesting? That I'm not going to do it by the book? That I'm not going to follow the law? What are you suggesting there? What was he suggesting? What is Susan Rice suggesting? Why do you have to tell the FBI director and the intelligence community that it needs to be done by the book? When in fact, in reality, we know this is all crazy, because we know that Obama knew everything, and Susan Rice knew everything, and Brennan and Comey up to their eyeballs in it. They all knew everything, and they weren't doing it by the book. Not even close. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay. Well, Vanessa Trump, the wife of Trump Jr., received an envelope in the mail today with white powder in it. And so she's off to the hospital. That's where she's at now. Last word. Now, it appears from the last information I've gotten is that, as it turns out, the substance in the envelope was not harmful. But maybe not physically harmful, but what is it? It's a threat. I mean, you can't send the president a letter like that because it'll be someone will get to it before he will. And the president doesn't open his mail, someone else does. So they sent it to Trump Jr. Now, talk about upping the ante. When you send the president's son and his wife, and keep in mind, they have 4 or 5 small children. When you send this to their home, and we all know what it's about. It's about to make them think that they could receive anthrax, okay? And it's an anthrax scare, is what it is. It's a threat. It's a kind of a terrorist act in a way, because you're kind of terrorizing these people, sending them white powder in an envelope, which, a lot of people think, oh, this could be, anthrax or ricin or anything like that. So anyway, it was obviously a threat. It's to send a message, a statement, and exactly by who or whom or what message it seeks to send. I think we can all speculate on that. But you can bet your bottom dollar that Trump, when he learned about this, was hot. I bet he's madder than a hornet. You're messing with the president of the United States, people. He's the most powerful man in the world. You try to play these games with his son and his son's wife and his grandchildren. These are serious games. Now, the Secret Service is investigating, and hopefully they'll find the guy who did this and who is behind it. But usually when you get these types of things, it's not just one person. It's multiple people that get them. And if you remember the last time this type of thing was done, it was back right after 9/11, and you had a couple people, specifically this Democrat Congressman, Tom, what's his name? Liberal Democrat Tom, what's his name? Was calling for an investigation in the Congress of 9/11. And a bunch of people started receiving anthrax in the mail, fake anthrax. But a few people got real anthrax, including him. And of course, he wasn't calling for a 9/11 investigation anymore after that. Tom Daschle. It was Tom Daschle, Democrat Congressman Tom Daschle, maybe a senator. He might have been a senator. And he was calling for an investigation into 9/11 by the Congress. And people started receiving these envelopes with white powder, and some of them were fake and some of them were actual anthrax. Then they did the investigation, and of course, Uncle Bob Mueller was in charge, and they never really found the right guy. The guy they were going to try to pin it on ended up committing suicide or being murdered. I can't remember which, but he turned up in a dumpster, if I remember correctly. And he was like a research scientist type person. Now, keep in mind, we only produce anthrax, as far as we know, in about 2 or 3 different labs inside the United States, and they're all military contractors. They're essentially labs that have civilians, military personnel, mostly from the Department of the Navy, and research scientists who are government contractors. And they all have security clearances, and these are very secure sites and things like that. Plus, anthrax can typically be traced to its source. So we'll see if any other anthrax letters or fake anthrax shows up anywhere and who they show up to. But you can bet that Trump's kids probably got their security increased, along with their children, their wives. They're probably pretty nervous right now because this is a threat. This is what this is. And you can bet that Donald Trump is not going to be very happy about this at all. And more power to him. They're only making the president angrier and making him more motivated to try to get to the bottom of the deep state, who's out to get him. And now, apparently, not just him, but his kids too. When you start messing with a man's children, or his wife, or his grandchildren, it's one thing to mess with the man. It's another thing when you start messing with his family. That is a whole other, that's a level right there that most people, you cross that line, let's put it this way. When you cross that line, those are the types of things that will get you, let's just say that you'll get bad karma as a result of those types of things. And you can bet the president is going to be dropping some bad karma on some people, because you can bet he's probably got his Secret Service and said, hey, I want you to find out who did that. You guys find out 24/7 round the clock. Don't stop until you got an answer. I want this person found. You can bet there's a hot pursuit of this. You know, whoever did that, I don't know if it was a practical joke, a prank, or exactly what this was, but now it's been taken to a different level, my friends. Things have just gone ratcheted up a couple notches, and it's going to get uglier and uglier, as I told you. BuzzFeed has hired a former FBI agent and White House National Security Council official, Anthony Ferrante, to try and verify parts of the dossier. Now, this is in reference to the lawsuit between Mr. Gubarev versus BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed is desperately trying to keep themselves from being sued into the poorhouse, but it's not going to work. But now they've brought in this former Obama administration appointee, former FBI agent, White House National Security Council person, and Mr. Ferrante, and he's going to try to verify parts of the dossier. Well, considering every intelligence agency on the planet, as well as every media organization on the planet, has been trying to do that for over a year now, I can only wish you luck, Mr. Ferrante, but I can tell you that the judge down there in that case in Florida is just about out of patience with BuzzFeed and their attorneys. And it's just a matter of time before he's going to shut that circus down and say, look, time after time you're in here with your attorneys, you keep saying that this thing was true, you're going to prove it's true, Mueller's going to prove it's true, someone's going to prove it's true. Never has happened. And at some point we have to draw this to a conclusion. And the fact of the matter is, BuzzFeed was obligated, when they published the story, to verify what was certainly the allegations they made against Mr. Gubarev. It's a simple, clear-cut case. They made an allegation against Mr. Gubarev, which was false. And they can't prove it. They cannot prove it. And they better be able to prove it, or they're going to lose. And because they can't prove it, they say, well, it's not that we can't prove it, it's just that we haven't proved it yet. But we're going to prove it, and eventually the judge is just going to get tired of it. This has been going on for, goodness, almost a year now. So it's just a matter of time. BuzzFeed's going down, by the way, in that lawsuit. Diane Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, is now claiming that not a single revelation in the Steele dossier has been refuted. Let me say that again, because I know some of you are going, what? What did she say? This is a quote from Diane Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein. Not a single revelation in the Steele dossier has been refuted. Holy smoke. Let me tell you what. I can honestly say that 100% of the dossier has been refuted, because what did the dossier seek to prove? That essentially that Trump and Putin, officials in the Russian government, were working together to fix the election against Hillary. They worked together to hack the DNC, to get the emails, to give to Julian Assange, to leak, and the whole nine yards. And Carter Page was involved, and Cohen was involved, and all this stuff. Every bit of it has been refuted. Every bit of it. Not to mention, for those of you who haven't read the dossier, let me break it down for you the best way I can. if you look at the dossier, it appears to have been written by 2 or 3 different people. The persons writing it were there's at least 2 people writing it that are one of the two. They're either Russians who speak very poor English and don't write or use grammar very well, or it's an American or a British person or someone who does speak English and does have good command of the language trying to pretend that they're a Russian writing in the dossier. We have a completely different style. The style of the dossier changes 2 or 3 times. About 50% or more of the information in the dossier is literally right out of newspapers, open source. And what did Nellie Orr do for the CIA? She worked for them as an open source researcher. What does an open source researcher for the CIA do? They read books, magazines, and other publications that are open sourced. It could be encyclopedias, dictionaries. They watch movies. They read books. They read magazines, Reader's Digest. You name it. All they do is read. Tons and tons and tons of stuff. Looking for intelligence leaks. Looking for anything that could compromise anything of the intelligence community. And that's what about half of the dossier is. It's things that someone set on a computer who speaks or reads Russian could go to Russian media sources and read Russian newspapers, read Russian magazines, Russian books, and get information that was published in the open for the public to read. That's about half the dossier. And all of it written with poor grammar, commas not there, italics missing, sentences arranged in funny order, bad spelling, bad use of grammar, all this stuff. Nothing that would look like the handiwork of a British spy who has a good command of the English language. Then we have the claims themselves. 3 basic claims in the dossier. 2 of them make up about 90% of the dossier, and the other makes up about 10%. The 2 that make up about 98% are both proven false. The very first claim was that Michael Cohen met in Prague with Russians to orchestrate a payoff. This was proven false. Cohen has never even been to Prague and was never even in Europe any that year at all. So it's false. Diane, turning your guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, false. The next claim, which makes up about another 40% of the dossier, is that Carter Page was offered a commission if he could get Trump to soften his position on Ukraine and lifting U.S. sanctions. The commission would have been about $500 million. Page is now suing everyone as a result, and he will win. And it appears also that it says here that Igor Sechin was said to be the source. Page has never met Sechin, nor has he ever had a one-on-one meeting with Trump, nor did he ever know or even have a conversation with Paul Manafort. None of these things are true. Diane, turn in your guns, Mr. America Feinstein. None of it. And the final 10%, the PP-Gate story. And that appears to have come from Hillary Hatchetman, Cody Shearer, given to Sidney Blumenthal, given to Jonathan Weiner, and passed along to Christopher Steele. There you have it. There you have it. 100% of the dossier debunked. And everything, as I said before, hinges on Christopher Steele. Well, everything hinges on the dossier, and the dossier hinges on Christopher Steele. There you go, Diane. Turn in your guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein. You say not a single revelation in the Steele dossier has been refuted? I just refuted every bit of it. You nut. Fruitcake. William Campbell, the FBI informant, will be testifying in open hearings. And likely, he will be also testifying in the case out in Little Rock, Arkansas, which is being investigated, the Clinton Foundation investigation, by the U.S. Attorney in Little Rock, Arkansas. He will probably be a witness in that to testify in that trial. But we're now learning that now that he's done his closed session hearings and everything, that it appears that he's obviously having some medical issues, going through chemo. He's not feeling great. But at some point here in the not too distant future, he wants to do a public hearing. He wants to sit in front of Congress with the TV cameras rolling, and he wants to tell his story. Why? Because he is being attacked by the rotten Reverend Clinton, and her disciples, her demented disciples, are attacking Mr. Campbell, and he's not happy about it. And he wants to let the world know. And he's going to sit there in front of open hearings and tell his story. That should be very entertaining. We'll be covering that for sure. You know, we're talking a lot about the Inspector General and the fact that his report should be coming out in March. As I said yesterday, a lot of the revelations that have led to 8 or 10 of these DOJ and FBI people and all these text messages, we're getting all this stuff because of the Inspector General. That's where it's coming from. He's also the one who found the missing text for the most important months. The text between Page and Ben Strokinus. The DOJ said they couldn't find him. The FBI said they couldn't find him. And the IG said, oh, I got him. You want him? And he turned him over to the Department of Justice. And now they're going through them. And it's just a matter of time before the 3 committees investigating will get them. And boy, where did we learn what's in those? But we also talked about 2 months ago about the fact that a lot of what was done in this dirty deal was done within the National Security Division of the DOJ, which was very compartmentalized. And we know that when the IG, Mr. Horowitz, attempted to investigate within that part of the DOJ, the NSD, Sally Yates would not allow that to happen. She wrote him a letter stating, here's the reasons why you are not allowed to look into the NSD, which is the super secret division of the DOJ, which is where Bruce Orr was working. So we know that Inspector General Horowitz is not going to be able to get anything from there, which is probably where the real jewels are hidden. But he'll probably get enough that will give Sessions the political cover he needs to appoint a special prosecutor. And once you get a special counsel, they can go anywhere and look at anything, including the NSD. Oh my goodness. I gotta have a drink for this one. Here we go again. A sex worker who alleges to have had a relationship with Anthony's Weiner from 2014 to 2016 says that Weiner often kept 2 laptops open while she was at Weiner and Abaddon's apartment. First of all, can anyone here tell me, I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe kind of stupid. I don't even know what a sex worker is. What is a sex worker? Could some of you in the comments section explain to me what a sex worker is? I don't know what that is. I'm honest. A sex worker. I just don't know what that is. Never heard of that occupation before. Could someone please enlighten me what a sex worker is? Because a sex worker who alleges to have had a relationship with Anthony's Weiner says that she was walking around his apartment all the time while Huma was out campaigning with Hillary between 2014 and 2016, and he had 2 open laptops all the time when she was around. That's suggesting he was quite careless with the information that he knew. Remember, he's a former congressman. He knows he's got thousands of classified emails on his laptops. He's sending dick pics all over the place. He's leaving his computers open. I mean, this guy, I can't believe he's not in jail for violation of the Espionage Act. And who knows? He might be before it's over. NBC's reporting that Rachel Brand, who was number 3 at DOJ, left because she feared that Rodenstein would be fired and that she would have to take over the Russia witch hunt. and the Mueller circus. And she didn't want to do that. So now the DOJ is disputing this charge. Now, she is right. Rosenstein is on his way out. He signed off on a FISA warrant that was based on fraud. So yeah, Rosenstein is on his way out. He's not long for this world. It's just a matter of time. Probably after the IG report comes out and the special prosecutor is named, that will probably be the end of Rosenstein. So now that she's gone, I imagine the next man up, huh? God knows who that'll be. But hopefully it's someone good. Hopefully a Trump appointee. But that's interesting that they would run that story at NBC and that the DOJ would dispute it. Chairman Nunes is now focusing on CIA Director John Brennan. In May of 2017, Brennan testified under oath that he did not know who commissioned the dossier. And we now know he lied. He also says the dossier did not play a role in the early intelligence assessments. Oh, really? They didn't? Well, then, Mr. Brennan, you better be prepared to come up with some really good evidence that was used to play a role in the early intelligence assessment. Because up to this point, we haven't heard of any. The only thing we've heard about is Papadopoulos and the dossier. And neither of them are going to cut muster, Mr. Brennan. And yeah, you lied under oath, right along with Comey. And Brennan, the CIA director and a good friend of Hillary's, has been in the shadows lurking about. Oh, by the way, he's also now on the payroll of NBC as a intelligence, source or something. I don't know what. Commentator, I don't know. But a horribly dishonest man, and will probably be going to prison as well. And keep in mind, my friends, Obama is going to be questioned as to whether or not he knew about the spying on Trump and the surveillance and the entire thing. We are going to get there. He will be the last. The last two people to be questioned will be Obama and Hillary. That's why I asked about 2 weeks ago, who is the biggest fish in the pond? Because one of those two is going to have to serve up the other one. They both can't walk. Maybe neither of them walk. But yeah, Obama is going to be questioned about every bit of this. You bet on it. He certainly will. Now, he may plead the fifth, but it's going to find its way to his doorstep. You can bet on that. Here's a good question for you. Here's a tough question for Comey to answer when he comes back, assuming he answers any questions. Why did he close the Rotten Reverend Clinton email investigation without ever questioning Anthony Weiner, knowing good and well that Weiner had thousands of classified emails on his laptop? Comey knew that. So did McCabe. So did Peter's been stroking us, and probably a bunch of other people. Sally Yates, Loretta Lynch, Ben Orr, and the whole rest. Bruce Orr. But Obama knew everything. So did the Rotten Reverend Clinton and others. These people are all going down, my friends. They all knew everything. They're all involved. And finally, last but not least, we now have Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch saying there may have been not just a second or a third, but maybe even a fourth dossier. And that one may have been created by Obama's State Department, and it involves Maryland Democrat Ben Cardin. I haven't even had time to follow up on that story. I just stumbled onto that one. Well, my friends, I don't know what to say. I'm about out of voice. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. Bye.